Today, we're looking at issues at the top of the agenda in the southeast region. For that, we can cross over to our Bangkok bureau, where Ismail Wolf is standing by. Hello, Ismail. First of all, there's been escalating protests where you are over the past week over Thailand's controversial anti-amnesty bill. It looks as though a Senate vote on that has been pushed forward from this Monday to this Friday. Can you tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah, really, there was a rise in tensions after about 3 years of relative political calm in a country that's been toiled by political unrest for about the last decade. It's in the front pages of all the papers here, massive protests in the capital, Bangkok, and around the country after the leading party pushed through an amnesty bill that many people thought or saw that would whitewash or absolve anyone responsible for any kind of crimes or any accusations through the last 10 years of unrest. But many people thought that that was pushed through on behalf of the Prime Minister's brother, Thaksin, who was ousted in the coup in 2006. And it was a ploy to try and get him back into the country. He's currently in exile and is, if returned to the country, would have to serve a 2-year corruption sentence. So many people thought that Thaksin was behind that. And it seems that the government really underestimated the public mood. And there was a huge protest all over the city. And it seems that the government had to step backwards. The Senate says it's not going to push through the bill. And the government says that if the Senate rejects it, they will not push it any further. So really tail between the legs for the Yingluck Shinawatra government. And Thaksin not looking like he's going to return to the country anytime soon.
OK, well, let's just change tack now and go over to Burma. And ongoing intercommunal fighting there has ended in tragedy for a group of Rohingya Muslims who are trying to flee the country, the violence there, by boat.
Yeah, the Rohingya Muslims, they're a minority in Burma, and they really suffer under intense persecution from local communities. There was a lot of violence, anti-Muslim violence over the last year and a half, Buddhist mobs raging through Buddhist Muslim townships, burning houses. 140,000 of them are currently displaced, living in terrible conditions in IDP camps. And the UN Refugee Agency says 24,000 Rohingya Muslims have tried to flee Burma or Bangladesh along the coasts there since the beginning of this year, trying to flee the persecution and the situation, intolerable situation they're living under. We're getting to the end of the rainy season here in Southeast Asia. And the calmer waters is likely to lead to more boats leaving, Rohingya looking to settle in Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Muslim countries around the region. So it's likely to see that we're going to see more of these tragedies over the coming months as the Rohingya try to flee Burma.
OK, well, on the subject of immigration, we're going to take a look now at what it's like to move to your ancestral homeland after many years, perhaps even a lifetime spent living abroad. This is the situation thousands of Vietnamese have found themselves in. In fact, there are so many, they've even coined a term for it, Viet Khieu, which literally translates as overseas Vietnamese. The country's turbulent past, such as the communist victory at the end of the Vietnam War, forced many to seek refuge abroad, but many have now returned to their homeland, lured by a booming economy. However, as Cyril Payen reports, it's not always easy. It can come as quite the culture shock.
This is Tuta, owner of a popular restaurant in Ho Chi Minh City. But not too long ago, this local businesswoman went by the name of Aline, as she was known in France, the country where she was born and raised, separated by both distance and culture from her Vietnamese roots.
There's a difference between what I've received and what's on the bill. That's just the way it is here. And of course, the delivery guy has no idea what's going on.
At the age of 22, this young graduate made the leap and decided to settle here in Vietnam, where she is known as a Viet Khieu, or overseas Vietnamese.
I think that's the half French and half Vietnamese. She's really lovely. I think so.
And how about you? Do you consider yourself French or Vietnamese?
Both. French of Vietnamese origin. That's how I'm usually defined.
Over 40 years ago, her parents left the city known then as Saigon as the country was being torn apart by war. But more and more are returning, Viet Khieu born overseas but drawn back to the country of their parents.
I don't want to live a protected life. In France, everything's far too overprotective. Here, you live life as it comes.
Fearless indeed. But these young Viet Khieu are welcomed by a more peaceful and prosperous Vietnam than the one that greeted returnees in the 1990s.
Ils arrivaient dans un pays dont ils croyaient connaître la culture, mais ce pays avait changé. They came to a country where they believed they knew the culture, but the country had changed and they were regarded with suspicion by the Vietnamese, who saw them as traitors, like those who had fled.
It's a nostalgic ride along the Champs-Élysées of Saigon for Hong San, who returned to Vietnam in 1992 with some of the first Viet Khieu returnees. His family used to be one of the most influential in the city.
Look, it's all disappearing.
We want to help with what little we have, but at the same time, we're not totally tied to things here, because we know we probably won't end our lives in Vietnam. The place isn't immune to political and other changes, although honestly, we share most of our values with the country we grew up in, France.
Don't expect anything. Don't expect the Chinese to wait for you, nor the Malays, nor the Vietnamese, who just don't care about you. You must come with a fighting spirit, especially in this country, which is growing very fast right now.
It's the end of a long day for Thu Tre, and in Vietnamese tradition, as it is in France, it's time to socialize over coffee.
We don't really know who we are. We have Vietnamese values that are definitely out of fashion today, and at the same time we're very French because we spend our time complaining. I don't know, there's this negative side to the French, but at the same time there's a particular side to the Vietnamese who are very angry and very proud. Maybe we're just the worst of both worlds.
In France, I'm seen as an Asian, as Vietnamese. And in Vietnam, I'm not Vietnamese. I'm seen as French.
French from Asia or Asians from France. However they are seen, they are indeed pioneers in a young and changing Vietnam.
Right, that's all we've got time for. Thanks very much to Ismail Wolf for joining us for today's Asia Live. We're going to take a short break, but stay with us. Lots more coming up in the next challenge of Live from Paris with my colleague, Shona Bhattacharya. So do stay tuned for that.